Welcome to the Leo Lounge. My name is Mark Sheffield, and I am the founder and developer of Leo Mind and Body. And the Leo Lounge is a place where we are going to have real conversations with people living with chronic illnesses, disabilities, and mental health conditions. We talk about the stories behind the diagnoses, the lessons learned along the way, and hopefully remind people that they're never alone throughout the whole process. And today I'm actually joined by Megan. Megan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, before we jump into your health journey, I'd like for you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself. So, like, who is Megan outside of, hospitals and doctor's appointments?
I am 22 years old. I'm from the Midwest. I am an animal lover. I have 10 pets of my own with my family. I am a total book addict and a collector of hobbies. I love finding any new way to fill my time. When I was in school, I was studying communications with a minor in health communications, but I'm currently taking a break from my education to focus on my physical health. And right now, I've been finding some new ways to fill my time ever since a surgery I had back in April. I've been journaling, making jewelry, embroidery, and several other things, but I'm always looking for new hobbies.
One thing that I really loved reading about, though, from your background was your advocacy work, and we'll definitely get into that later. But it is very clear to me that you really don't want to just help yourself, that you really want to help other people too. So, where do you think that passion comes from?
I grew up very surrounded by volunteer work. I was in 4-H growing up, and the motto of 4-H is the 4-H stands for Hands, Health, Heart, Head. And so a lot of 4-H was us volunteering and learning how to give back to our community, whether that was through going to the animal shelter and washing dogs and taking them for walks, or sponsoring a family at Christmas to provide presents to, like any one of those things. My school was also very involved in canned food drives, like clothing drives, all these different kinds of things. So I've always been brought up in this community of just helping each other. I think that's just the Midwestern way. Midwestern people love community. We love to help each other. And I've always just been surrounded by nurturing people, and I've been a nurturing person myself. Originally, when I went to school, I wanted to go for nursing. In my first year, I was in the pre nursing program, but because of the physical demands, my body just wasn't able to keep up with it. So I switched to communication studies with a minor in health communications so that I'm still able to stay in that area of work while having a different role to fill. And the exposure to just so many different lifestyles, different abilities, and such. I love learning about different ways that people are able to achieve the same outcome and results based on what they're able to do or not able to do.
And even though you didn't finish off with nursing, still started off with it. So, how did that help you through, with your communications?
Yep, I haven't finished my degree yet. I did 3.5 years, and then I had to take a break for a surgery earlier this year. So I am hoping to resume soon and finish up my degree. But the nursing was very helpful I took a lot of terminology classes. And so I was able to better learn how to break down these concepts to better explain them to somebody else. Because when you are chronically ill and you're going into a lot of health environments and such, you're often being bombarded with a lot of very confusing jargon
Complex.
and language. Yes. And so having someone like a child life specialist in a pediatric unit, or a social worker, whoever it may be, who is there to just help the patients to better understand the process that they're going through breaking down the communication so they can better understand it, is such an important part of the medical system that is so often neglected.
It's a necessity in the medical system. So when we bring people into the hospital, a lot of times we would have social workers come in, especially for things like massive trauma calls, things like that, where we would need to get in touch with the family. And honestly, I thought they're always such an integral part of the care team because they're the ones that are helping keep the family updated at the same time that, the doctors are working to keep your family members safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And so important to have people in those positions who understand both sides, both the patient and the medical side, because they're not just communicating with the patient themselves, if they're a pediatric patient or a teenage, young adult, elderly, whoever it may be. They're also communicating with family members who may have whatever background. We don't know what education those family members may have. We don't know what literacy levels, because there's a literacy crisis in our country. We don't know what those people are working with. So you need to ensure that you have people who can meet someone wherever they are at to support their family member however they need to.
So extremely important. And I hope, that with your continued studying and then when you graduate that you'll be able to do exactly what you want to do and help as many people as you
I sure
can.
hope so. I'm looking forward to it.
So, with your story, it really starts out with something that, like, at first seemed a straightforward injury with the horse accident. Are you able to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I had been writing for 11 years before I had gotten hurt. I had been writing since the age of 6. I had ridden difficult horses, easy horses. I had fallen off more times than I can count, been kicked and thrown and whatnot. And this was just a normal horse show that I was at. It was at my home barn, and we were supposed to show outside, but because it had rained so much, it wasn't safe for us to ride outside, so we had moved inside. With moving the show inside, it meant that we only had one arena rather than a warm up and a show arena. And so, what we had to do was all the kids in the classes we would all go in and warm up our horses, and then we'd walk out before the classes and we'd each go out for our runs. But when we were warming up, that meant that there were 5 horses, 5 people riding horses, and 3 trainers, all in this small indoor arena with a bunch of jumps set up. And I remember my coach turned to me and she said, "Okay, you're just gonna hit that oxer one more time and then you're all done." And I rounded the corner and I was heading for my jump and I was focused on where I was going, and I didn't realize until I got pretty close that there was a girl who was walking in the line of my jump. She was looking behind her to get out of the way of another girl who was jumping, and in so did not see me. I did not notice that she was walking in front of me until it was too late. She didn't realize she was walking in front of me until it was too late. And I hesitated before the jump. And my horse was actually blind in one eye. So he did not know there was a horse there until we landed. And he was a little bit like, oh goodness, there's a horse there. So I got just discombobulated a bit in the saddle, and I ended up, after we landed, my arms were wrapped around his neck and my legs were wrapped around his belly. And he started to canter away back onto the rail, and I knew I had to let go because if I did not, I would be stuck between a 1,200-pound animal and a metal fence. And I didn't want to get crushed. So like I had done so many times before, I had fallen off just like this countless times. I let go, but as I let go, he was turning the corner to go onto the rail, and so there was extra momentum that threw me really hard onto the ground. I hit my knee and I snapped my femur clean in half. And I could not hear the brake, but you could hear the brake all the way from the front of the barn. They had to escort out all of the kids who were at the show. I'm pretty sure I scarred them for life. My parents came running in. They called the ambulance, and we had to have me taken to the hospital.
I'm so sorry that happened. I mean, breaking your femur is a major injury.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's the biggest bone in the human body. It's the hardest one to break, and I had never been hurt before from riding, not seriously. I'd had some nasty falls, but I'd never broken anything before. I'd never been to the hospital before, but it was really, really scary, honestly. I mean, I was 17. This was still COVID too, and so there was the unknown about all of that. And when I went into the hospital, they could not get medications to work on me for quite some time. So when we were in the field and the paramedics arrived, they set me up with an IV, and none of the medication that they worked could dull my pain. With some people, when they break their femurs, they go into a state of shock and they have so much adrenaline that they feel nothing. I was not fortunate enough to have that be my scenario. I felt everything the whole time, and they had to do a manual traction in the field, basically unmedicated, so to pull the 2 ends of the bone so they were no longer touching to relieve some of the pain. They had to do a traction, and then they had to drive me all the way back to the hospital, and Midwest roads are not the best maintained, so every single bump that we hit on the ambulance ride there, I would, like, cry out in pain because it was so incredibly painful. And then we got to the hospital, they gave me some more meds, I was a little bit more comfortable, they did, some X-rays and such, and then they removed the traction to put on a surgical traction, which is where they drill a hole into the bottom of your femur and they stick a pin through it and then they pull on it with weights until the two ends of the bone are no longer touching. I was given local anesthetic, not general, and I screamed through the whole thing, including when they broke the first drill bit and had to restart. And they did not call anyone down to give me more anesthetic. They did not do anything. They just went forward with it. They ended up needing 10 pounds of weights to separate the two ends of my femur because I wasn't able to have surgery until the next morning. And they had to make me comfortable that night, and that was the best way that they could do it. And so I went through a traction under local anesthetic.
I'm amazed that you were able to do that, honestly, because I've had one patient in the past who I've had to apply that traction splint to. I know the exact one that you're talking about, where it's a little device that gets put over your ankle and then a hitch attached, and then we start cranking it,
Yep.
and it separates the two. It's for a closed midshaft femur fracture.
Yep. And so then that was mine. I was lucky, like, my femur did not break through my skin. It was not green stick or anything like that. It was a very clean fracture through the middle of it. So, I mean, at least that turned out well.
So eventually with that, though, you had to seek treatment elsewhere, and you went through 3 surgeries, right?
Yeah, a total of 3.
That had to be incredibly frustrating. What do you remember most from that time?
I was really confused more than anything. Normal healing time for a broken femur is 6 to 9 months. I was healing quite normally for about the first 3.5 months or so, and then my progress really slowed. So when they first did the surgery, they put a pin through the entire femur, and then they put a nail through the bottom of my femur around my knee to stabilize it, and then 2 going into the head of my femur. So I had 3 screws and a giant nail in my leg. And when they first did it, it looked perfect. Looked like there was no fracture at all. It just looked like I had hardware now in my leg. Over time, as the healing started, some of those areas around the fracture will chip and then they will start to calcify. And I started building bone calcification, but the fracture site itself never went away. And so the longer and longer I was coming in for appointments and still in excruciating pain every single time that I was coming in, and my bone was still not healed, and for so long we didn't know why. So I saw nutritionists and I saw geneticists and I had a bone density scan. I had MRIs and CTs and all these different things to try and figure out why my bone wasn't healing. We never found a reason then why it did not heal. But that wasn't what I was upset about. I was never upset that my femur didn't heal. I was upset that my doctor pretty much abandoned me. My surgeon, after my first surgery, was fantastic. He seemed very attentive of my care and very confident in my healing. But after I was taking longer and longer and longer, it seemed almost like it was a blow to his ego that he had done a perfect surgery and it hadn't worked on me for whatever reason. So there was an appointment where I went in. I was, I think, 7 months post-op at this point, still had a very prominent fracture, still on crutches at this point, 7 months later. And he told me, if you do not come in 4 weeks for your next appointment without significant healing, we're going to have to do a revision surgery. And that was really hard to hear as a freshly 18-year-old because I was going to have to spend my second summer in a row in the hospital. I was going to have another major surgery. Like, that's hard, but I accepted it. And I was like, if that's what it takes for me to be healthy again, I'm willing to do it. And I came around for that next appointment. They took my x-rays. There was no significant healing. The resident we spoke with suggested surgery. And then my doctor came in and said, "So I hear you want a surgery." And I said, "I want my leg to be fixed." And he said, "Well, what if I told you that you don't need a surgery?" And I'd say, "That sounds great. How are you going to fix my broken femur?" And then he started going on about how he thought that the edges of my fracture were softening and I was finally turning a corner and starting to heal, and that I just needed to wait 2 more months before we talk about possibly doing a surgery. I was going to college that fall on a walking campus. Like most college campuses, they're not really built for people who have mobility issues getting around. And I knew that I had toured this college campus while in a wheelchair previously. I knew that I could not navigate it in a wheelchair, especially if I was going to be freshly post-op from a major orthopedic surgery. I reiterated those concerns to him, and he still declined. He said that he didn't think I needed it, that I would heal with more time, and that he wasn't willing to be so invasive so soon. That was when my treatment ended with him. We just were not willing to go forward with it anymore. I ended up going to University of Iowa hospitals and clinics and meeting with one of their orthopedic surgeons. He looked at all of my records, we took a very long conversation about my goals and what I've been dealing with, and he was just like, "Yeah, you do need a revision surgery because there's not enough stability for whatever reason for your fracture to heal. It is not able to heal because it's not being held tightly in place enough, and for some reason, this just isn't working for you. You need a bigger nail." So I went in. It was about pretty much 1 year exactly after my first surgery, and I had my second surgery. He put in a thicker nail, and then the same 1 screw in my knee, 2 screws into the head of the femur, and within about 2 months afterwards, my femur healed. Shocking. Yeah. The struggle then came, however, with my chronic pain did not go away. I improved quite a bit at the beginning when my femur was healing because I was no longer dealing with an active fracture. But then I was still having hip pain. I was still having knee pain. I was still having even pain at my fracture site. And so what we thought was maybe my body is just sensitive to hardware. And so we removed the nail a year later. So I had all three of my surgeries in June. They have all been like right around the same week, about a year apart. I had it removed, and the chronic pain did not resolve. I was just left with chronic hip and knee pain. I am no longer a patient with Iowa. They were fantastic. They helped me so much, but I just became a little bit too complex for them, as a lot of patients find. But I know that if I ever need help from an orthopedic surgeon again, I know exactly who to go to.
And so you said in your prep materials that you spent a long time really trying to hide how you were struggling because you wanted people to see you the same way they saw everyone else.
Mhm.
And I think that's something, honestly, that a lot of people can relate to. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have always wanted to fit in. I think that everyone does. You know, we go through that scary phase in middle school where everyone is different and it's terrifying, and so we vow to follow every single trend so that we never stray out of the public eye.
Middle school's such a scary
Oh,
time.
it's terrifying. But then to suddenly be made so drastically different from not only all of my peers, but from my former self was jarring. I had gone from being someone who was incredibly athletic, physically active, to someone who had to schedule when they washed their hair to make sure they had enough energy. Like, it was just such a polarizing difference, and I couldn't keep up with my old hobbies. I couldn't keep up with my old job. Like, I couldn't, like, so many things I just lost overnight, and I didn't really know what to do. And I didn't know anyone like me either. I didn't know anyone who was formerly able-bodied and then had a major trauma and now was severely dependent on mobility aids and other support and such. So what a lot of people tend to do when they don't have a same experience is they try to offer similar experiences that they may have. And I found that extremely frustrating because a lot of the similar experiences were very minor compared to mine. It was like, oh, I had my appendix removed. I broke my wrist in 4th grade. I'm like, that is its own like journey. I get it. That's not easy. Like you went through that, and I'm sure that like that had its own complications with it. But I am like forever changed, and my body is not the same, and I am 17 with a severe disability. That's jarring, terrifying.
So hard to compare apples to apples with that. Like,
Yeah.
people think that it helps, but
No, but it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It
unfortunately,
yeah. It was and then another thing was I held on to the idea for quite a long time that I would be fixed. I think because so many people who break their femurs, they do go back to being normal. I remember scrolling on TikTok and I saw a girl who was 6 weeks post-op doing a flippin' doing a flip on the trampoline. And I was so mad because I was still in a wheelchair at that point. I couldn't walk through a store, but she could do a front handspring on a trampoline. How's that fair? And so the longer that my condition went on for, I just kept realizing this some part of this is going to be permanent. Like I may get better, I may improve, but I will never be who I was before I broke my leg. I had to really refine myself. I had lost all of my old hobbies. I was someone who was riding my horses multiple times a week. I liked rock wall climbing. I loved working out, and all of these things I could not do anymore in any capacity. I also had to find new friends because my friends abandoned me at this time because I changed. I was a very different person. I was going through a very, very hard time in my life, and I changed a lot. And so it was a lot of figuring out who I wanted to be. And I've learned now that I am who I am today because of what I went through, and I wouldn't take it back. I am so thankful for the person that I have become. I am so much more patient. I am so much more empathetic. I can think through scenarios with so much more depth and understanding. And that was because my body forced me to slow down. I had been running through life at the fastest speed I possibly could. That was just how I lived. And this was something that really slammed the brakes, and I had to stop and just see the rest of the world going on around me for a minute. And eventually I realized that some of the habits that I was clinging so tightly to seem normal and to seem like everybody else, were hurting me. And I realized that I wanted to start living for myself, even if it didn't look like my old life.
honestly, the it's so hard looking back on what you used to be able to do and thinking like, okay, which of those things can I achieve again today? And it's just the limitations.
And it's
And
learning to be okay with former hobbies being in your life in a different way. For a long time, I didn't realize how hurt I was about losing my equestrian career. I had my plaques all hanging on my wall, come home from college, and I would just stare at them, and it wasn't helping me move forward. I still have all those plaques. I still have all my ribbons. I still cherish them, but they hold a different place in my life. And they're kind of like my dead wife, they live in my closet. I bring them out when I want to reminisce, but I have things going on in front of me. I have a life in front of me, and I want to be able to look at that rather than being stuck in the rear view.
so, what do you really wish then that people understood about invisible disabilities?
They are dynamic. They needs change and abilities change, not just day to day, but hour to hour. Just because I'm able to do something in the morning doesn't mean that I can do it in the evening. Just because I did it one day doesn't mean I can't do it another day. If the weather is different, if the wind is blowing a different direction, if it is raining, if I took a shower that day, if I had to do physical therapy, like depending on what I'm doing, I am planning out every facet of my life now. I really have no room for spontaneity anymore, which is something that I really miss. Like, I miss just being like, "Oh, I wanna go to the farmer's market today." I can't do that. I can't just decide I wanna go out and do something. I have to be like, "Okay, the farmer's market's on Wednesday. It's the Wednesday before right now, so I need to start resting up and saving my energy, drinking more electrolytes. I need to figure out what mobility aid I wanna use. What am I going to wear so that I'm the most comfortable while I'm outside?" Like, all of these different things that, like, other people do not have to consider, and they don't think that it has that big of a difference, but all of those little things that I am taking into account have a huge impact on what I'm able to do. And so when you see someone with invisible disabilities who are able to do more some days, that is not without its own cost.
It absolutely has its costs. And instead of letting your experiences stop you, you really have started working to make things better for other people. Would you mind telling me some about your accessibility initiative?
Yeah, so I created the initiative Bridging the Gap, Building Accessible Communities, kind of by accident. I competed in a local Miss South Dakota competition, not really knowing what it was. I was just trying to find things that bring me joy, and it was something that I wanted to do, and so I decided to do it, and I ended up winning. Which meant
Hey,
that I got thrown into this world that I had no idea about. I'd never done pageants. I'd never thought about doing a pageant before. And my only experience with them had been like toddlers and tiaras and like reality TV shows. But while I can't speak for any other organizations, the Miss South Dakota organization was so different from what I thought it would be. It was so much more about empowerment through sisterhood and through support from other people. It was so much more about your community service initiative and what you cared about and what you were doing with that passion to share it with the world. There were girls who talked about epilepsy. There were girls who talked about dyslexia. There were girls who talked about food insecurity. There was girls who talked about period poverty, like so many different topics that all of us had a passion for that we were bringing to the forefront. And it was so, so great to be with other women who were also passionate about their own thing. And they were different from my passion, but we still had a common ground. I I learned so much from how to reach out to different people. I learned how to spread my message better, and I learned how to create a platform that I was proud of, and it was because of that organization. And then that really spurred me on to the work that I did later, because as time went on, the physical demand of pageants became too much for me, and I had to hang up my crown. I can no longer compete, but I still have a great appreciation for it. But I still went on to do even more advocacy work in my year that I was not competing than when I did.
was that
I
during your
worked.
college time?
Yes, yeah, it was during my last year of school. I was really focused on my health. I was in a very, very big health decline at the time, and I was in a speech class, a public speaking class, and whenever I had to give a speech, no matter what class it was, I talked about accessibility in higher education for disabled students because I wanted people to hear about it so I wouldn't shut up. And so I gave a speech in my public speaking class about the inaccessibility of higher education. And a classmate of mine was involved in student government, and she really latched onto the topic. She found it so interesting. It was just something that she had never been exposed to. So she had never thought about it before. But now that she was being faced with it and seeing the reality that students face, she wanted there to see a change made. And so she talked to me. She's like, "Hey, would you come and speak to the Students Association?" I said, "Okay." So I put together a presentation and I went and I told them about my experience as a disabled college student, my frustrations and obstacles that I have faced, but also some of the areas where our school was really excelling because our school did have some areas where it was doing quite well, but there was also room for improvement. I was able to talk with them through why disabled students are not graduating at the same rate as able-bodied students and why that's happening and how we can help to make it a more even playing ground for everyone. And through that, we also created a proposal for a disability task force, which would be a task force composed of different members of the board. and they would help to address different accessibility needs on campus. It was passed. I became a part of the task force. We spoke with athletic staff to talk about how to make our sporting events more accessible for not just students, but also for all fans, all spectators. We want everyone to be able to enjoy it, whether they're a student or not. We talked with collaborating education classes who were learning about disability education, and we had them go out and look for areas on campus that were not meeting the needs of disabled students so that they could bring it to our attention. Because having more eyes on an issue just creates more awareness and more help for solutions. We discussed out-of-regulation bathrooms in old buildings and how to resolve the issues so that students have a reliable place to use the restroom no matter where they're taking their classes. So many different areas that they were common concerns amongst the disabled students. I knew several disabled students, and we all were very frustrated by these things. And they just were things that the normal student body wasn't aware of because they don't have to look at those challenges. They don't have to worry about a poorly maintained sidewalk. They don't have to worry about an elevator being under maintenance that they weren't made aware of, or a inaccessible door that the pull force is too heavy on so you can't open it. They don't have to worry about those things. And I think something that we don't talk about enough is everyone will be disabled at some point in your life. Unless if you die young, you will be disabled by old age at some point. And so everyone will rely on these features of accessibility and universal design. So then why are we seeing them as optional? Why, if they are something that everyone will need at some point, are they not essential?
Absolutely right.
It's an issue, and it needs to be talked about more. And the more awareness that we can bring to the issue, the more eyes we can have on it, and the bigger stink we can make about it.
Absolutely. And then the more people that we can help.
Mm-hmm.
It's really amazing all the work that you've done and are doing, and through your social media work, posting, talking about, and just being open with people. It's just truly amazing. Creators like yourself, just being able to watch as you guys make that kind of content to help other people feel seen, feel
Mm-hmm.
heard, and know that there is a community out there for them that's just like them.
Yes.
Even if it's not just like them, similar to their situation, so that they can at least have somebody to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know going through this stuff alone is just horrible. It's
It is so
without my support system, I wouldn't be able to be where I am today.
very fortunate. My family is so supportive of me. I have amazing parents. My brother is amazing. But I don't know anyone in my real life who is disabled to my extent. And at this point in my life, I am the most disabled I think that I have ever been. And it was so hard trying to keep up with everybody else. So when I found Leo and when I found the community from this app, it was so great because I wasn't alone anymore. And even though no one in Leo has the exact same experience as me, and I don't have the exact same experience as anyone else in any of the disabled community, they get it. And they don't try and make it okay. They don't try and be like, oh, it's fine. You're totally good. Just don't worry about it. They're like, hey, you're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to work through these hard emotions and these hard times. And you should feel that. Like, that is a perfectly valid feeling. And if you need someone to feel those feelings with, I'm here for you. And that is one of the most important things that I have gotten from being a part of the community.
Honestly, it's the people that I've met through Leo too, they've become such good friends of mine. Like, I can just reach out to anybody, like an ambassador or just anybody from the Leo community, and be like, hey, something's going on. And just instantly, people are like, let
How
me
can
know
I
what's
help?
going on. How can I
What do you
help?
need? Where do you need support? Do you need
And
options to talk through? Yeah.
it's it's really cool seeing how that community started from an empty
Mhm.
Discord server with me and a few interns starting off in it, and now it's grown. I think we're up to like 30 or 40 people in the Discord, and it's honestly just so amazing. The community that's been shaped, it's so cool to watch it flourish. Now, we end every Leo episode with the same question, so if you could finish this sentence for me. I hope someone listening today remembers that.
There is too much pain in this world to fight over it. Just because someone may be in more pain or less pain than you, that does not undermine your experience. Your accomplishments are worth something, not because they compare to another's, but because they are yours alone and because you should be proud of yourself.
Amazingly said. Megan, thank you so much for sharing your story and for everything you're doing to make the world more accessible for others. It really has been a pleasure to have you here on the Leo Lounge.
It was a
And
pleasure
to
to be
everyone
here.
listening, thank you so much. If today's conversation resonated with you, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if there's someone whose story that you'd like to hear on a future episode, let us know below. We'll see you next time on the Leo Lounge.